Hello? Okay, there we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 22nd Annual Harvest of Voices. So usually I don't give announcements, but I have some very good news that I want to share with everyone. Today at 4 o'clock, the Blue Sage went before the Planning Commission for our Sage Alley structure, and it was a unanimous vote in favor. Now, Tuesday, Town Council, we go before Town Council. So 6:30, we'd love to see you there to support us. That is this coming Tuesday at 6:30. Okay. I would like to thank the Literary Committee for everything that they do. It's an awesome committee, and they always do such professional work, so I really appreciate it. Anyone who's on the Literary Committee, could you please stand?
But you gotta tell them that their judges don't know.
Yes, they do not. Last year, I don't think any of them got selected, so they worked a little harder this year. I'd also like to thank Tama Capolini and Lou Musicar for everything that they've been doing to get this Harvest Festival, all of our events happening. Now, if everyone would please be sure to turn off your phones. And I'm going to turn it over to Carol Kotowski, our MC for tonight.
Thank you, Deborah. Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. This is one of my favorite events of the year. And Deborah did most of the welcoming and thanking of people. So what I would like to do, we love recruiting new writers. You're gonna see some new faces tonight. So I just wanted to quickly go through how this works so that some of you out there who haven't submitted before might wanna do it next year. So round about the beginning of July, we begin requesting submissions of prose or poetry from anyone on the western slope of Colorado. So that's the eligibility criteria. And if you want to be one of the first to know, you need to get on the Blue Sage mailing list if you're not already, and then you'll know when the submissions open up. And then the pieces are due in mid-August. And as Laura Lee said, we have a double-blind judging process. So the judges don't know who the writers are, and the writers, even the committee members, don't know who the judges are. So it's very official, completely anonymous. And then we choose the top scored pieces to be read tonight at this event. And it's not a super easy process, but we kind of, depending on how long we have for the event, we can make a cut point, and it's pretty competitive. We had 57 submissions this year. So, and we could only choose 15 of them for the event. So one group that I would like to thank is the judges. They're sort of the unsung heroes because nobody knows who they are and we can't really tell you. But they read every one of those pieces and they judge them on a couple different criteria, and they put the scores together to make it easy for them. So let's give a round of applause because they know who they are. We don't. So I'm going to keep my chatter to a minimum because we have lots of readers tonight. We want to get right to it. We're going to kick it off with Steve Harper, and his piece is titled Hood Ornament. Steve is a retired lawyer, among other things. He and his wife, Paula, have lived in the North Fork for 41 years on a small farm that includes an apple orchard, a hay pasture, and large garden on Hanson Mason north of Hotchkiss. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Carol. I wrote this about 2 months ago. It's a personal essay, and how do they say it on the movies? Based on true events. Anyway, it's entitled Hood Ornament. Recently, when I left the grocery store parking lot heading home, I noticed something odd on the hood of my Subaru. I initially suspected bird excrement, but I hadn't parked under of trees while at the store, and in my experience, bird excrement doesn't appear with a pair of eyes staring back at me. As I kept driving, it became clear that the eyes belonged to a rather striking green and yellow grasshopper. I didn't know how, where, or when this brazen insect jumped onto my car, but there it was in all its splendor, hanging on to the slick, polished surface, not budging, like a hood ornament. Remember hood ornaments? Like the ones on the old pickup in the airplane fuselage at 3rd and Grand here in Paonia? During the 50s and 60s heyday, American automobile designers went on a binge creating fins, fancy grills, and hood ornaments for most models. Part brand identity and marketing, part designer creativity run amok. As for hood ornaments, it's hard to outdo the one gracing the 1954 Pontiac Star Chief. This beauty sported an ornament of a Native American face and neck, Chief Pontiac, I presume, sculpted out of orange translucent plastic in a forward-facing pose attached to flowing chrome hair strands blown back from the center of the hood as if by wind. The Star Chief exuded speed standing still. My father's 1958 Oldsmobile came with a snazzy chrome jet airplane attached to the front of the hood. The sleek jet was the antithesis of the boxy Olds. Maybe that was the point. Anyway, Subaru missed out on the mid-20th century hood ornament frenzy. Subarus display the Pleiades star cluster in an oval on the grille, but no hood ornament. However, I now had an ornament on my Subaru, at least temporarily, a sure-footed, prominent, majestic hood ornament. The ornament hung on motionless as I bounded over the railroad tracks and ascended Hanson Mesa Road north of Hotchkiss. I'm embarrassed to admit I accelerated a little up the hill. Okay, a lot. Seeing if my hitchhiker would lose its grip and slide off the hood to the pavement. What does that say about me, I wondered. The grasshopper didn't move a millimeter while the speedometer hit 30, then 35, approaching 40. Why didn't I try slamming on the brakes, you might ask? Well, I didn't think of that, but what does that say about you? As I approached the turn to my place, a half mile from the grocery store, I considered the ethical quandary here. If I had succeeded in getting my ornament to fall off earlier, was that fair to my neighbors to deliver yet another hungry, horny insect to invade their yards and gardens? And I selfishly didn't want to transport it into my domain either. I've been parking my car lately under the shade of a tree next to the garden, and I didn't want to unloose another set of hungry jaws to seek out our tender produce. I didn't ask for this. I recalled the movie, The Hellstrom Chronicle, a 1971 documentary which convincingly concluded that when, not if, Homo sapiens becomes extinct, insects will inherit the earth. I guess I was now an unwitting participant in this inexorable evolutionary handoff. Grasshoppers have become quite the nemesis this summer. Their population may be related to the record amounts of snow and rain last winter and spring, or it could be related to something cyclical, like 17-year cicadas, and this turns out to be the year. I hadn't bothered to research it, choosing instead to just accept it and live through it like we used to do about most things before Google. But grasshoppers are everywhere this year. They decimated a friend's garden a few weeks ago, and they kept bounding onto my fingers and shirt as I picked raspberries. I started to mow the orchard the other day, and the massive number of hopping bugs I scared up was plague-like. It seems they just help themselves to all things green. They breed and eat and breed. Much like humans, I observed. The Hellstrom movie answers the question of which species prevails. Of course we've had grasshoppers before, but not like this. I left a part of the orchard unmown, hoping the hoppers would stay in the longer grass and stay out of the garden, but in doing so, I admit that I allowed these tiny creatures to alter my behavior. In past years, in early spring, my wife applied something known as grasshopper spore to the areas surrounding our garden. Spore, a microsporidium fungus, is a slick organic way to control this insect. Young grasshoppers eat the fungus, get sick, and transmit their sickness to older, larger grasshoppers through cannibalism, according to one website. It must be applied early in the season to catch the initial generations, but this spring, the stores we contacted all sang the same hymn. Sorry, no spore available this year. One proprietor suggested we sprinkle flour onto our basil that would deter the grasshoppers and maybe make them sick if they ingest it. We thanked him politely for this recommended alternative to spore, but our silent glance at each other indicated our skeptical concurrence. Yeah, sure, that'll work. What happened to my hood ornament? I stopped short of my garden in the driveway, got out of the car with the intention of batting the grasshopper off the hood toward the pasture. Instead, it was a mighty swing and a miss. Before my hand could achieve contact, my hood ornament, which had remained perfectly motionless since the grocery store, suddenly leaped about 8 feet high and 10 feet straight ahead toward the garden and out of sight, as if that were the plan all along.
What a way to start. So this next one is a poem by Anna Mettler, who unfortunately at the last minute couldn't make it. So Deborah's going to read her poem, but I will introduce her so you at least know who she is. Anna Mettler, and Alpenglow is the name of her poem. And she writes in her bio, after growing up under the rainy, dark, and low-hanging clouds of the German Rhineland, Anna has since cherished every day of Colorado's luminously blue skies. Journalist, teacher, mother, musician, she now delights in grandchildren as well as picking in the park, peeling peaches, pickling peppers, and writing poetry in Paonia. I practiced that.
Alpenglow. The grasses, oatmeal yellow, delicate sentinels above the freshly fallen snow. The ditch, kissed by the sky, blushes. Winter willow red lines the fox's exploratory path. All of us here, quietly here, aglow.
Thank you, Deborah. Beautiful poem and beautifully read. She just read it for the first time tonight, so very good, nice. Our next reader is Betsy Marston, reading Homesick, 1882. Betsy is a longtime journalist who concurrently edits the opinion service Writers on the Range. Her motto is, "A day outside is never wasted."
Hi. For this poem, think of the 19th century cowboy legend. Hard guys on horseback, choking on dust from trailing herds of wild horses or cows. Always competent, sometimes heroic. But if you read novels by the likes of Elmer Kelton, one of my favorite writers, you'll learn that some of these cowboys were teenagers. They were trying to live out a manly dream of the West. Homesick, 1882. All he wanted to do was watch her hang up clothes. She thought he'd want to go upstairs when she was done, but no, that wasn't what he had in mind. He seemed glad just to watch her skirt billow and bellow as a steady wind blew off the prairie, smacking the sheets and twisting the clothes. Or maybe what he liked was watching her arms lift up at dusk with the sun fixing to sink forever. He'd come into town after riding the trail, following a herd of wild horses on the way to Wyoming, 300 head and still well-fleshed. When he walked into the saloon, he stood out from the hands crowding the bar. She could tell he wasn't the kind that liked to drink or talk much. He looked more like a boy who maybe had the good book beaten out of him. Yet he wasn't timid. He knew what he wanted, and he cut her out of the herd to bring it to him. Outside, where all was quiet, the day fading out, a clothesline waiting. After he'd gone back on the trail with the rest of the riders, she talked to the girls, saying the kid with the funny request was one of a kind. All I can figure, she said, is when he asked me to hang up clothes, he wanted to see something simple, something that reminded him of home. Oh.
Thank you, Betsy. It's beautiful. Okay, our next reader is Boyd Boland, and he's written a piece called The Names of Paonia. Boyd was born and raised in Paonia, the son of an apple farmer and a school teacher. He spent 35 years in Denver for a career in the law. He and his wife Lisa are working to make their Paonia family farm beautiful again. His 3 children, Kate, Norman, and Clara, are named for their ancestors, which will make more sense after you hear his piece. Welcome, Boyd.
I grew up in a little town in western Colorado. The founder, Samuel Wade, wanted to name the town after his favorite flower, the peony, using the Latin P, air, O, N-I-A. The post office department refused the name, saying that the AE ligature isn't American. So the town became Paonia. My sisters are named after the girls in the Basic Reader series, Sally, Jane, and Betty. We had a cat named Puff and an uncle named Dick. Then I came along. My name is Boyd. In the Paonia of my youth, there were 3 Boyds, Boyd Boland, Boyd Emmons, and the other Boyd, whose last name is lost in the vagaries of time. My father was Norman. He was an apple farmer and the manager of the Union Fruit Company. His chief competitor was a man named Carroll Wade. He was the grandson of Samuel. My father's friend was Virgil Freiberger. Virgil was married to Peg. When Virgil died, Peg remarried to a man named Oscar Rice. Peg wasn't really her name. Her name was Fannie Mae, which reminds me of my grandmother, Fannie Lou, which reminds me of my other grandmother, Lulu Etta Mae, which reminds me of my mother's friend, Ada Mae. We lived on Sunshine Mesa, midway between Paonia and Hotchkiss. Hotchkiss is named for its founder, Enos Hotchkiss. All of the men on Sunshine Mesa were farmers. Herb Blankenship, Trustin McAllister, Trustin's son-in-law, Hurley Jack Hayden, Hurley Jack's sons, Herschel and Claire, and Topps Holaby. In the valley below our farm were the cattle ranchers, including the Camel brothers, Wayne and Cal, Dewey Maurer, and Red Hughes. My friend was Angus McCammon. His father, Wally, was the lawyer. In the neighboring town of Mare lived a man who knew how to skin hogs, Curly Pfeiffer. Curly's sons included Luce and Kermit. Paonia had a Clem and a Claude. Clem Auden ran a coal mine. Claude Davis was in charge of the school buses. When my father died, my mother applied for a job with the superintendent of schools, M. Malcolm Drake. Malcolm's first name was Marion. He had a son, Burns. It's a good thing that Burns wasn't the son of my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Bacon. Malcolm Drake was the superintendent of schools for many years, but when he retired, he was replaced by a younger man, Laddie Livingston. The assistant superintendent of schools was Mo Kreitz, married to Dorothy now. Paonia had its own Homer and Marge. Homer Taylor was a custodian, and Marge Porteous taught English. There were other school teachers in Paonia, of course. Mardell Stevens, Henrietta Grable, and Cora Mordica. Ruby Davis, she taught 2nd grade. She was the wife of Claude Davis, but no relation to my 7th grade reading teacher, Dot Davis. Gladys Van Gorder, Mamie Beasley, Ward's wife, math teachers Mildred Camel, Cattleman Cal Camel's wife, and Nina Denbesti, Tib Snedden, who taught English, and Zori Zackley. The football coach was Granville King, no relation to Surveyor Sebring King. The principal of the junior high school was Roscoe Etherton. When Roscoe retired, he was replaced by MacDonald Knight. MacDonald was no relation to Hobart Knight, the banker, whose father, Sherrill, was an apple farmer. Arvin Stahl ran a big orchard on the north side of the North Fork River. Commodore Wilson and his son Gilbert ran an orchard on the south side. The car mechanic was Harry Carey. Harry was married to Mary. The man who ran the dairy was Orville Schneider. Paonia had 2 Shorties and 1 Tolly. Shorty Hunton managed the hardware store in this building. Shorty Wood was the postmaster. Tolly Johnson played the trombone. The doctors were Woody Brown and Clyde Heinck. Clinton Clock owned the washateria. Pete Polis cut hair. Across the gully from our farm was a vineyard run by a man named Steve Rhodes. He bottled his wine under the label S. Rhodes. I think he should have used his father's name, Dusty.
That was amazing. And you get the feeling that he was just pulling it out of his head because he knew all these people. Yeah, beautifully read. Thanks, Boyd. Next we have Tara Miller, and she'll be reading The Finished Carpenter Sculpture. Tara is a gardener, semi-retired potter, and godmother in Peru. She's been married for 39 years. Her poem may suggest how this is even possible. Tara, welcome, Tara.
Thank you. The Finnish carpenter's sculpture. Trained in the old apprentice system 50 years ago in Germany, he knows the details of joining, of careful cuts and exact measures. His work is an oak cabinet, finely wrought and sanded smooth, but he shows me his sculpture. A thick slab of oiled walnut, 1 foot wide by 2, made just after his wedding 40 years ago. Carved an inch deep, a forest scene, a man, a woman, a flowing stream, a deer. The grain had succumbed to a deep diagonal crack, but he keeps it to remind himself. Marriage is like that, always has a crack. You live with kindness, forgive the flaws of your mate, of yourself. Marriage is like that, he says, always has a crack. you live with kindness, forgive the flaws of your mate, of yourself.
Thank you, Tara. It's so beautiful. Okay, we're on to James Schott and Laura Lee Yates. We're on to Laura Lee Yates. I knew that. Thank you, James. Laura Lee is next. She'll be reading The North Fork Strangler, A True Tale of Garden Depravity. I think you'll like this one. Sometimes Paonia resident Laura Lee Yates takes a break from her immersion in researching and writing historical fiction to complete a bit of personal nonfiction, or to escape to the wild country with her dog for an altitude adjustment. Welcome, Laura Lee.
I thought we should say hi to the paradise over there. Snug in my 100-year-old house that icy night, with the fist of winter still clutched tight, I dreamed of tidy rows of bean seeds uncurling, thrusting toward remembered sun. In a fool's sleep, I imagined the plants, leaf upon leaf, lengths of green, sleek as freshly groomed fur on a finicky cat. It's easy to underestimate an adversary when it lies buried, but there, underneath the snow, you slept. For decades, I lived in another landscape, acid soil, cool, moist days, foggy nights. Here in the North Fork, the air is too dry for the hordes of snails that attacked my coastal gardens where, on a night that will live in infamy, under a misty moon and armed with buckets, we captured 467 of the spiraled mollusks. It was genocide, no words minced, and didn't change a thing. Reinforcements were endless, crunching underfoot wherever we walked near the ivy. In this valley, my foe is green. With the first whiff of that spring, you erupted, unfazed by frost, to coil above the naked soil. Rototiller blades hacked you to pieces, but your roots dug deep, fingering down to fight again, 5 feet, 10, even 15. Seeds that can remain vital for 50 years would outlast me. What chance had slim vines of cucumbers, lacy tomato leaves against the tendrils of such a nemesis? Combat was merely a series of holding actions, a race against time, desperate measures to thwart entwining embrace. This was nearly enough to make me contemplate poison. The internet proclaimed its effectiveness, and am I not the shepherd of this soil? Predator control, that's all I ask. But I could not do the deed. Instead, I cursed, tugged, dug. Convolvulus, the Latin calls you, loving name of morning glory, those bold blue blossoms embellishing a fence. You are a poor and cruel relation, pale tickled pink and puny, but blossoms nonetheless. You are part of this place I now call home. In this part of the world, I have learned to love red rock and sagebrush, longing to be one with my landscape, though for years I've been a hugger of trees and still yearn for the clingy bark of redwood, remember the brush of maidenhair against naked legs. Stone will not yield to me, but I came to appreciate stark geometric formations, russet and ochre, layered beyond counting. I learned respect, and maybe that was my first step toward love. Bindweed, I do not love thee. I acknowledge your right to exist, but not in my garden. I nourish the soil, and you are the one who thrives. I water, and you wriggle in an ecstasy of power, reach out greedy arms to seize your latest victim. Even the robust, rampant zucchini that bears massive fruits overnight will not survive your grip without my aid. I remain vigilant and hope for a better future. I hear rumors of a nematode bred for you alone. It cannot come too soon. A friend whispers, acidify your soil. Under the spruce tree, only a single ringlet, scraggly, weak. I recall where I am, patches of alkali on the way to the dump and not far to the dobies. Maybe acid would work. Is the simplest solution best? Then my mother died, and so did my marriage. I moved 2 blocks away, bought a house with tall evergreens, a picket fence, and no white knight in sight. Snow crowns Lambourne. In sun, I squint and tramp in yak tracks. Fiona snuffles into the white cold like an overeager anteater and dashes through drifts. At night, I page through seed catalogs, color therapy with carrot and crimson and aubergine, tabs of bright sticky notes, sentinels for spring. I summon my courage. But forewarned, I start small. I am at home now with mountain trails and Columbine and skies of deep, dry Colorado blue. Yet I do not trust so easily. If I plant, will the serial killer strike, garroting infant peas? I take the risk, soaking and poking and tamping soil in place, watering, watching, waiting. When tendrils break into the light, I am unsure, but legume leaves tell me I've escaped, at least for now. And the years pass. I wear time's terrain on my face, the miles on my knees. I feed the sparrows my Audubon friend despises, and in spring, the grosbeaks that pass through. Globes of fairy light shine on herbs and broccoli. I build raised beds for Valentine lettuce, Thai chilies, and cilantro, plant fruit trees and berries. Wherever I cultivate, purslane appears, and spiky thistles. In the back, beyond the sagging clothesline, whitetop threatens to swallow the grass. But the only sign of the strangler, tentative outside my front gate. I keep that gate latched tight and hope my $3 weed eater lives forever. Without forcing anything, I learn a green North Fork kind of peace.
What a perfect Harvest Fest story. Now James, you can't escape. James' piece is called 7 p.m. Summer Albuquerque, 10 years old. That's correct, right? That's your title? That's a lot. James lives with his wife Carol on a small farm on Lambourne Mesa. Among other activities, James writes. He writes to discover what he thinks. I like that.
This poem was inspired by an encounter between a 10-year-old boy and a discarded Dairy Queen cup on an empty street in Albuquerque in 1946. The title is 7 p.m. Summer, Albuquerque, 10 years old. Arms outstretched like a tightrope walker in the middle of the street. Head forward, 3 quick steps, and pop! His toe connects. The DQ cup springs to life, dances one-legged, and then pirouettes into a drunken wobble and stops upside down. half steps to the left. He casually calculates the distance. Kapop! A solid kick. The cup rises, a stable launch. No wobble, no yaw. The anti-gravitational engines gyro smooth and high. Descending, it pitches forward, a lip landing. It somersaults to the other side, hops backward. The boy breaks stride, stops, skips, aims, and kapop! A third quick swipe catches the cup well ahead of center, spinning it into a red blur, ending quicker than a 4th of July pinwheel.
Thank you, James. Wonderful. We have one more before we take a break. This is a story, I believe, by Elizabeth Evans, Homeless, a Psalm of Green Pastures. Elizabeth is passionate about helping people pursue vitality in their lives with massage, fitness and movement classes, and group activities that inspire joy. Joy is, in fact, her middle name. She is a grandparent, mother of 6, loves to write, hike, bike, and be in and on the water as much as possible. She's currently writing a book about healing from complex trauma. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Homeless, a psalm of green pastures. I am jolted awake by an oceanic need to pee in that 1972 RV. It's as old as I am and packed with 6 kids and a narcissist snoring by my side. I smell the junipers wafting through the window, sweet spiciness, and I step over small bodies strewn on the floor, carefully sliding into my shoes on the way down the rickety metal stairs. I walk towards the toilet bucket, where the collection of sawdust mingled with my family's collection of waste and scent of itinerant wildflowers melds. Sitting down on the cold seat, I awaken a little more as my brain senses the chill through my posterior regions. And I look around and notice the spider web woven overnight. I touch the silvery sage and tear off some leaves, feeling their soft gristle as I crush them and breathe deep the fresh pungency of the oils releasing into my fingers. All of this, it's not enough. Even the intimate micro beauties of this moment cannot rescue me from the heavy weight of homelessness. The bread-shaped mint green RV that is only about 16 feet long behind me on that forsaken dirt road holds all my treasures. My 6 children, worn down into hopeless nubs by our gypsy lifestyle. Sparkles are long gone from their eyes, and my husband demands to be cared for and catered to, while he shirks his responsibility to care for his family. He is well-muscled, but lazy. A showman who to his fans is a victim of some rough breaks, a victim to having to care for such a large family. Bitterness was a constant bloody taste that swirled in my mouth, settling into pain in my gut. So alone, so ashamed. I emptied that bucket of shame on the tiny crest of that hill in the pasture and turned back to the RV. The kids were stirring with small moves, which would soon turn into cries of hunger, and the constant questioning about where this or that belonging was. The inevitable answer often was, in storage, so sorry. Later on that day, I could hear him on the phone, his voice full of blustering bravado, but I could hear his fear that he really was a nobody. He was seeking to become famous, to be somebody via get-rich-quick shortcuts to wealth, talking with the next con man agency to whom he would send money we needed for clothes, shoes, and the roof that was missing over our heads. Many days I took the kids to be away from the tin can hole of that RV, that very real reminder that we were homeless. We were at the library and the rec center for hours and days on end. We ate at the parks, escaping, too embarrassed to be with friends and family. And we would shuffle out of the car and huddle together in the evening. My hand would stroke my children's heads, their forlorn curls, their wrinkled brows, whispering hope that I struggled to believe in myself. And we would read together, exploring other lands, other places, and I would feel their warmth burrowing into me, giving me the reason I needed to keep trying, to keep waking up to another morning of being stuck, called to approach my bucket throne again. The sun is drawing down on this day. Beautiful magentas and oranges are firing up the sky, and the spider web is dewy from that light afternoon rain, and the sage appears supple, and this exact spot has a beauty that changes with each breath, each sigh of the wind. I am in a moving and breathing painting. I sit with soft eyes on my perch, and I take in the fresh mountain air. I am refreshed, and I get for this moment that I can taste and see that Yahweh is good. Because the blessing in this little slice of time is the awareness of that ever-shifting beauty. Some of the cows in the pasture are beginning to settle down for the night. A gentle lowing as mother cows are beginning to settle down for the night. Or a gentle lowing as mother cows call to their young calves to settle in. The colors deepen in the sky, and I know, I feel, I hear a still small voice deep down. It whispers because it is close. This painting you are a part of is just for you, my child. I will make you lie down in green pastures. You are not alone. You will see. You will not always want or yearn so. For now, enjoy this home, this place. Do not miss my embrace in this moment. I lingered there and watched the painting change colors over the mountain and the tiny flying bugs circling and the scent of the sage and pine needles and cooling soil coalesced into a peaceful medley. And I was home, ready to return to my children with new strength. Deep breath. I was being held from deep within, and it was time to serve yet another dinner of wraps and to sit around the campfire yet again and sing and hope again, trusting for a better tomorrow. And tomorrow would be yet another visit to my ever-changing latrine of shifting masterpiece. Another run on a fire trail with the dog. Another afternoon of taking care of geriatric parents of the people who owned the land we were squatting on. Another meal prepared for 2 families. Another day of driving away to gain some sanity. Another day of trying to find work, to kickstart our lives again with someone who wasn't willing to play by the rules. Another day of hustling for side jobs. But tonight, I'm closing my eyes after comforting my children from my own soul's ache, and I give in to the drug of choice for the poverty and grief-stricken of the world. Deep sleep.
Was moving. Motherhood. Well, that was our 8 readers for the first half. We are going to let you have a break, and then we'll bring up the other 6 that we have for the second half. I don't think I have any other announcements to make here. We'll start making some noise when it's time for you to come back. Keep an eye out for lights changing, people hustling you back here, and go get some fresh air and get a drink, whatever you need. Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for our readers. Who thinks they might get the award for traveling the furthest for this event? Anybody? Arizona, nice. Anybody further than Arizona? There's a California, but traveled for this event? Well, let's clap for Arizona. I had another one. Who thinks they might have been to the most Harvest of Voices events? This is the 21st annual. We were 1 year behind the Harvest of Voices, the Mountain Harvest Festival event. We weren't at the first one, but anybody been here like 10 or more? 12? Do I have 12 more? 20? 21. Who's got 21? Is that Thomas? Donna. Let's hear it for Donna. That's awesome. Okay, we're gonna kick off the second half with some rap music from Philip Salambier. It's called Paonia Rap. Salambier. As Philip tells it, writing the good, bad, or indifferent, I love it all. I get lost in the stories and words, and that's the important part. And moving to Paonia 10 years ago, that too is the important part. My wife and I love it here. We can't imagine a better place. We have 3 children spread out across the land. We love our friends, playing music, and digging in the soil of this wonderful place. I'm a retired architect. Thank heavens for that. Welcome, Philip.
I have to experiment and see if I need my glasses. Maybe I do. I don't know. You get old, you need that kind of thing. We're warmed up here. It's so grand, Grand Avenue and the view. It's Paonia and it's all new. To me, I see every day what I say. Paonia is now my way. And that's Paonia, neat and wide, upside, downside, nothing to hide, left and right in my sight. It's more than just all right, it's mighty fine. We got Dons and Indigo, dependable, reliable, farming home, dirt and loam, clay works and cirque, go berserk, paradise, mighty nice, blue sage, all the rage. Simple Cafe, Nitos, Beditos, Bikes SK, it's the way, refinery in the nest, here's the rest. Espresso, just so, breadworks, mountain oven, grains and loving that bread. Reedy's the Flying Fork. Where'd you go? Bookstore, I adore Louis' Place with bikes to race. High country news and shopper. Nothing to proper, we got the blues. You can't refuse. When you got the blues, you got to go to the pub. Next stop, flower shop. Sweetgrass rhymes with no. KVNF, and that's enough. And if I left someone off, you can call my lawyer. But I think he just left for South Peoria. And ways to get higher than a kite can fly. Paonia purple, marijuana, do you wanna? Trees and bees, crops and hops, beers and gears, murals and squirrels. Engineers Odyssey, follow me, North Fork uncorked, picking in the park after dark. What more could you want? What more do you desire? Don't answer that or you'll make me a liar. With my pants on fire, uptown, downtown, all around, love the town. Can't get down on this town. Hunting and hiking, biking and fishing, and wishing sing upon a star. How I wonder what you are. Scar on the mountain that looks like a lamb. Scar on the mountain where trees won't stand up. Sup, pup, cup of brew, bowl of stew, fox in the hen house, cattle in the fields, blackbird in the bushes, signs of rusty steel. Next stop to heaven, that's what we are. So you better get off or you'll go too far. If you want to get to heaven, play like an angel. And close to heaven, you can hear the trumpets, you can hear the fuss. Yes, next stop to heaven, that's no lie if you want to be in heaven and pass us by. But stay for a while before you die, and you will discover in Paonia what you want to be. What's in a name? What's in fame? I don't need it here because we're all the same. Yeah, we got music. And if you want to hear it, go to the park and Rob will infuse it. The hills are alive with the sound of music. And play it if you must, for we got it all. Saxes, trumpets, basses and more. Drums, flutes and roots, horns and hoots, strings and swings. If you want to live here, you better bring your happy But it ain't got room if it rhymes with crappy. You can change your name, but you'll always be just who you are to me. For here we don't care, we love you anyway, no lie. We love you till we die. Soon the monsoon, too hot to trot. Spring and fall, not bad at all. Winter time to rest. You can go south if that's the best. Or we're here when you return to welcome you back, and that's a fact. Waterworks and Brilliant Stars, music group, and at least 4 bars. And it's time to harvest in the garden, squash and corn, peppers and cukes, beans and tomatoes, greens and tomatillos, berries and fairies, fruits and rocks, peppers for supper, squash with lots of booty. Our sidewalks are filled with cracks. We got potholes in the road, that's okay. I can take a bruise, just pick me up, 'cause I got nothing to lose. I don't care, I watch my step, I don't complain, but sometimes I pray for the rain. We don't have a ski resort, we got no stoplights. Our mountain's not a teener, and the airport doesn't go to Catalina. But it's all just fine, 'cause we got dark skies, sunrise, pigsties, beehives, oh my, cherry apple, peach pies, valley highs, bourbon pies, pizza taco, food trucks, big bucks, big bees, good lucks. Cherry days, 4th of July, big parades, mountain harvest, legion of artists. The council's in a funk. Did I just smell a skunk? Or was that a passing monk? Coal miners digging in the ground, trains are coming rumbling down, farmers and ranchers, and a river we call the North Fork. River Park in the dark, on the mark, set, go for a ride when the water is high, byway, my way, small town, big heart. I'm stoked, friendly folks, no joke. Nothing could be finer than Paonia in the summertime, and the living is easy, queasy, breezy. I've traveled the oceans, I've traveled the seas, but after searching this land, Paonia is where I want to be. I hope you agree. Come on, come on, come on, come along with me.
Keep that man in front of a crowd. All right, so who is in charge of Mountain Harvest Fest that can get him up on stage sometime during the festivities? Because that would be awesome too. Love to hear that one again. Nice, thank you, Philip. Okay, now everybody take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your nose. We have some poetry coming up. Alyssa Grace. She's reading 2 because 2 of hers were picked in the top 15. Unbecoming and Tear-Stained Silk. Alyssa Grace is a Midwest magpie who landed on the Western Slope some time ago. She's an author of countless journals and is highly acclaimed by her mother. I am too, I get that. She's closely related to ferns, river rocks, mycelium, foxes, and iridescent beetles. She aspires to embrace the deepest sorrows and sweetest joys life has to offer. Welcome, Alyssa.
All right, I think it'd be a little weird if I tried to wrap these, so I'm gonna skip that tonight. These pieces are sort of strung together from my journal entries about losing my sister to suicide about a year and a half ago. And it's an interesting process putting these together because grief is such a shapeshifter, but one I know that a lot of people can relate to. So it means a lot to be sharing with you tonight. This first piece is a blessing to the grievers among us. When the light dims and grief shadows your heart, may the moon guide you home to the place where fireflies waltz and air hangs thick. When your legs can't carry the weight of this loss, may the earth rise to meet you. Let her catch you. When the tears on the horizon fill you with fear, may you surrender to the river. Let them fall to water, swept onward. May the lilacs bloom in your chest, fertilized by grief, watered by tears. May you let this change you. For one day the sun shall still, and the ocean shall freeze, so too will your light flicker. May you surrender to that sweet unknown. Let mystery sweep you up in steady arms and cloak you in the comfort of unbecoming. May you be loved, may you be held, and may you grieve deeply so. Tear-stained silk. I know the sound of a teardrop in an empty heart chamber, once filled with your laugh and scoff. The crows cry, the quiet echoes. My heart's garden is watered diligently, tenderly tended with my tears, in hopes that a seed may sprout in the pit you left. Yeah. I hope there's daisies and lavender, and maybe some radishes too. Remember planting radishes in the greenhouse? I crouched and poked small holes with a pencil, which you filled with seeds coated in green clay. You dropped them in, I'd cover them with soil, on to the next. We were amazed by how quickly they grew. Palm to soil to small red bulb. We'd snap off a bite to celebrate the thing we made together, even though neither of us liked radishes. A year later, every flower reminds me of you, reminds me of death. It's made me a worse gardener. Premature death is just the way of things. What's a desiccated squash in the desert? It's hard to care. But snakes remind me of you too, and those I still treasure. I can't help but scoop them up, much to their chagrin. Those snake-catching memories are joyous, brave sister. I am still joyous, sweet sister. Your death was a chosen one. My grief is chosen too. It is messy and traumatic and long. It's too much TV and not enough sunlight. It's wailing into someone else's garden, clutching earth, pouring sorrow into the ground. But it's gentle too. It's dappled trees and a snot-covered rock. It's deep and hot and painful, and so damn beautiful. And here I still am, heart cracked open, tear-stained silk and wet willow blossoms, drenched and grateful. I miss you. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. It's beautiful. There's some beautiful poets here. Okay, we have one by Ildi Ingraham called The Summer I Will Always Remember. Ildi was born in Budapest, Hungary, and immigrated to the United States when she was 2 years old. Since she was 23, she's lived in Paonia on and off for a combined 23 years. Ildi is a sound healer, massage therapist, jeweler, and astrologer. She's married to artist Eric Ingraham, and between the two of them, they have 3 daughters, a son, 5 grandchildren, and a chihuahua. Welcome, Ildi.
First of all, I'd like to say that I am deeply honored to be up here with all these incredibly talented people. And also, I am going to dedicate this true story to my 6th grade teacher who told me that I could be a writer. Thank you, Mr. Keene. Okay. In the summer of 1965, when I was 12 years old, my mom took my 16-year-old sister and me to Europe. By the time we got to the French Riviera in Nice, we were exhausted. My mom drove us hard, wishing to see as much as possible every day. When we got to the pebbled beach, I threw down my towel and collapsed into a deep sleep. After a brief rest, it was time to go. We headed to the train station to take a train to Monaco. Not being seasoned travelers yet, we each had 2 suitcases, which we had stashed at the train station for a small fee. We got to the station, retrieved our luggage, bought the tickets, and went looking for our train. My mom asked a porter which train was going to Monaco, and he pointed to one of them. We boarded the train, but before we could grab a compartment, my sister announced that she needed to go to the bathroom. Back then, you couldn't use the toilets on the trains if you were in the station, because the toilets just had a hole on the bottom and everything just fell on the tracks. So no one was permitted to use the toilets until the trains were out of the station. My mom looked at me and said, "The train is scheduled to leave in 20 minutes, so we'll be back before the train leaves. But if by any chance we don't make it back in time, get off the train when you get to Monaco and we will be on the next train to meet up with you." They walked across the platform and disappeared through a door. As soon as they were out of sight, the train started moving. Here I was, a painfully shy 12-year-old, with 6 pieces of luggage, in France, knowing very little French, but I had received instructions, so I knew what to do. I found a compartment with an empty seat and proceeded to move the 6 suitcases 2 at a time to the compartment and hoisted them to the overhead luggage rack. I sat down and looked out the window, watching for the sign that said Monaco. I expected to get there soon, but noticed that I wasn't seeing the coast or palm trees anymore. Knowing that Monaco was on the sea, this seemed odd. I had to find out when we would get to Monaco, but I was terrified of having to talk to a stranger. There was a young woman sitting across from me who looked nice, like someone I could trust. So, with all the courage I could muster, I finally said to her, "Excuse me, do you speak English?" She hesitantly said, "A little bit." Good enough, I thought, so I said, "When do we get to Monaco?" She indicated that she didn't understand. So I rummaged through my mother's satchel, which contained all our passports, all the traveler's checks, and all of our cash, and found a pen and an envelope. I quickly drew a picture of a train and wrote Monaco above the train with an arrow. She looked at it and with an alarmed expression said, "Oh, Monaco! This train not go Monaco, this train go Bordeaux." I took this in. I'm going to Bordeaux. And then these thoughts flashed through my mind. When I get to Bordeaux, I'll get off the train and store all this stuff at the train station. Then I'll go into town, get a room, go back for the luggage, and once I'm settled in, I'll go look for a job. Maybe. Maybe washing dishes at a local restaurant. Eventually, I'll grow out of my clothes and I'll wear my sister's clothes. And then my mother's clothes. I had it all figured out in a flash. I had a plan. Meanwhile, back in the train, the young woman leapt from her seat and looked around for a kindred spirit. She saw a woman her own age and quickly went over to her and hurriedly spoke to her in French. I saw her point to me, then point to the 6 suitcases. The other young woman took this all in and they had a hurried discussion. The train stopped at the next station and the women started pulling my suitcases off the rack and gesturing for me to grab the other 2 and follow them. The 3 of us got off the train hauling all this stuff, and I just followed along, grateful for someone to lead the way. As we were hustling through the station, a man in a suit and tie walked up to me and said, "Are you Iliko Farkas?" "Yes, I am," said I. And I knew that my mother had contacted authorities back in Nice and had set a search for me into motion. 2 hours later, I was on a train headed back to Nice. As we pulled into the station, I saw my mom and my sister. I was standing by the open window, waving madly. When we saw each other, we all started crying. Through her tears, my sister said, "I thought I'd never see you again." Once in Monaco, we went directly to a cafe. My mom ordered 2 ice cream cones and a beer. Then she told me that the authorities were going to stop the train at the station where I disembarked with the 2 women and search the train until they found me. I can only imagine what the 2 women thought of the whole ordeal of this child on the wrong train with 6 suitcases. The waiter brought the ice cream cones and the beer. My mom, who I'm sure was a nervous wreck through all of this, took a very long draught of her beer, and as she put her now half-empty mug down, said, "The first sip is always the best." Thank you.
God bless practical-minded young women. My goodness. Thank you, LD. Okay, next up we have Ben Bentel. Did I say that right? Ben Bentley. Glad I asked. Missouri is the name of his piece. Not Misery. Missouri. And his bio reads, fruit fly, folk singer, hay hand, translator, poet, ex-physicist, and gardener. Somewhere between American folk and Persian classical, birdsong and stream flow, bringing chaos to form and order into chaos. Welcome, Ben.
I think that's as good as we can do. Is that all right? I wish I had a firefly on my tongue every time I talked of Missouri. I wish I had a wood thrush in my ear and clay between my toes, covered in silt and filth to my thighs, to be a boy with my mother, Missouri, sitting on a hickory trunk, watching other trees float by.
Thank you, Ben. More amazing poetry. You just kind of want more when they're short. Like, can you read 3 more that you might have written? Okay, we have 2 more people. Debbie Bennett is next with Fleeting Wisdom of Antelope Flats. Over the last 50 years, Debbie Bennett has had many poems published in literary magazines across the United States. As an English teacher at Manitou Springs High School, she guided young creative writers while teaching everything from world literature to journalism, drama, debate, and grammar. Debbie is still active in education as a volunteer and substitute teacher in Delta County. She lives in Hotchkiss. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you so much for having this showcase for the power of words. In Ashley National Forest in Utah, there is a campground called Antelope Flats. I never really gave the name much thought until I had an interesting encounter there, and that is the subject of my poem, Fleeting Wisdom of Antelope Flats. Soft grasses rush along the shore in urgent waves while I gather feather-light driftwood scattered like bare bones of ancestral heroes, bleached white relics carried on timeless tides. Somber skies rumble muted threats and lightning creases the eastern plains. Untouched on her western perch, and the sun pours gold on mountaintops and daintily skirts radiant peaks. Surges of power pulse through me as the bulbous clouds race overhead. I turn to trace their shadows and, suddenly arrested, stand face to face with a pronghorn sentinel. This sunset icon bears eternal knowledge as ceaseless as the wind whispering secrets to the willows. His dignified eyes hold me in a centuries-old dream. Staunch guard of time-worn tombs, he awakens in me ageless wisdom. His hypnotic gaze weaves filaments of silken threads that bind us. Unmoving among the rocks, the statue stands, imposing and tranquil. A blinding crash rakes the mountains that shudder to accept onrushing darkness. The vision vanishes in a flash, an ethereal spirit that mocks my ponderous mood. Suffused in wonder, I remain alone among the grass lashing at my legs.
Very visual. Okay, this seemed to go faster than past years. I guess it is what it is. But we have one more left. Can you hear me here? Diane Sylvain, always a crowd pleaser. A few suggestions for living. Diane Sylvain has been maundering on about life in Paonia for much longer than seems possible, even to her. On weekdays, she bothers other writers as copy editor for High Country News, and on Saturdays edits a bulletin for the Catholic Church. Occasionally, she fiddles with artwork. She's very good. She didn't write that, that's ad-lib. But can usually be found wandering around the North Fork Valley, reciting poetry to indifferent cows and generally irritating the grasshoppers. Welcome, Diane.
This has been just an amazing night. I kind of feel like overwhelmed to even think to be part of the readings I've heard tonight. They just have been, I mean, hasn't it been like sort of like yeah. So this thing, I don't really know what to think of it. I mean, usually like when I write something, it kind of has a theme, sort of like, you know, like walking is cool and eclipses are cool and COVID is not cool. And this is, I guess, kind of like the commencement address I've never been asked to give. Because I wouldn't be really good at that, you know? I mean, you're supposed to say things like, follow your bliss, do what you love, and the money will follow. And I'm like, yeah, do what you love, and, you know, find a job. And, you know, and then, what is it, the other thing they say is like, go out and set the world on fire. And I'm like, no, we got enough fires. So anyway, this is what I was trying to think of, like I should have learned something by now. So anyway, I am slightly more than halfway through this particular decade. And all I've learned is that being a sexagenarian is rather less sexy than you might think. I have no idea what it's like to be a septuagenarian, though I hope I will have learned to spell the word by then and maybe even pronounce it correctly. Still, I ought to have learned something. Not that anyone ever solicits my advice, unless it's something like, does this need more garlic? Do I look okay in this? Or is there a reason to use semicolons? Yes, to all three, although the last often requires elaboration. But time is supposed to bring wisdom, and I have spent a few years scuttling about. So I might as well offer suggestions, beginning with words I've frequently heard. Why don't you just look where you're going? This is excellent advice. If you look where you're going, you're less likely to be body slammed by elderly Cadillacs when you're cruising Florida roads on your brand new 10-speed, or have undesirable encounters with gravity in the form of long, uneven stairways. Gravity gets us all in the end. Don't encourage it. But it's more than that. If you pay attention to where you're going, you're more likely to notice the view. And this planet, for all its problems, has a lot worth seeing. Wherever you are, there is something to see. So pay attention. Nothing, not even a mountain, lasts forever, including this. So let's enjoy life while we can. Most of us cringe when we glimpse our reflections in windows or brightly lit mirrors. It doesn't get easier as time goes by, so remember that however horrid you look in photos now, 20 or 30 years from now, you'll be sighing wistfully about just how cute you were. Exceptions include most yearbook photos. And government-issued IDs and driver's licenses are issued as warnings. This is what we'll become if we misbehave and do hard time in purgatory. Besides, why look at yourself if you don't have to? After all this time, you ought to know where your teeth are when you brush them, assuming you still have them. Look outward instead. When you travel, take back roads. Investigate historical markers. Eat at funky local places, unless the funk gives off a whiff of typhus. Take public transport, if possible. Not only is it better for the planet, you get to see places from unexpected angles when they're not expecting you. Rail yards and alleyways, forgotten fields and backyard gardens. Arrive at a magic hour if you can. Early morning when the world's brand new, or late in the day when the light's honey golden and everything reaches out warmly to welcome you in. Talk to people. I don't find this easy being an introvert, but much as I dread talking to strangers, I generally end up enjoying it. Make friends with folks who are different from you. You already know what you think about things. Find out how others see the world. They're usually wrong. But every now and then there's a conversation during which you can feel the furniture stored in your mind getting dusted off, even shifted around. Speak up clearly against cruelty and dishonesty. Silence slides into complicity. But do be diplomatic with people who might be armed. When you're out wandering, especially if you're alone and female, pay attention to those invisible antennae we all have twitching in our brains. Don't talk yourself out of that first instinctive reaction, because it's usually worth heeding. Don't live in fear, but don't be an idiot. It's a risky business being alive. I'm the kind of person who carefully averts my gaze whenever I get a shot, on the theory that if you don't look, it won't hurt as much. This works on small owies, but not on serious ones, especially the major ones, great pains and sorrows and griefs of life. Don't look away from these. Face them as bravely as you can, because it's going to hurt no matter what you do. You might as well confront it. Bad things, sad things, unbearable things happen, but somehow we generally get through them. As Robert Frost put it, there's no way out but through. Nourish your curiosity. Read anything and everything. Never leave home without a book. When you're reading, you're living in several worlds at once. You can time travel, even live other lives. Everything becomes so much larger. Question authority, yes, but more important, question yourself. Don't rely on your own research, especially if that means just glomming on to people who already agree with you. Even Einstein and Hawking required peer review. You are not, as a rule, the center of the universe, and neither, sadly, am I. There's a lot of other stuff going on. So be humble and be kind. Respect your fellow creatures, except maybe mosquitoes, cheatgrass, bindweed, and certain politicians who shall remain nameless. Notice little things, leaf light twinkling in an unexpected breeze, the long blue shadows of grass on a sidewalk, the softly tinted undersides of clouds, and ooh and ah openly at the big things that deserve it, rainbows and comets and the Grand Canyon, the dear and irreplaceable faces of the people you love. Practice resurrection, as Wendell Berry says. Wake up to everything in you and around you. Someday, I believe, a true waking will occur. Meanwhile, cherish the days. They are a gift, and it's always later than we think. We come in mystery and we go in mystery, and mystery wraps its arms around us and calls us each by our own mysterious name. Hildegard of Bingen was right, I think. We're all feathers on the breath of God. Yet each of us is named and known and needed somehow in this world. Love calls us here and breathes us into being. And love will one day gather us home when our brief, tender time on earth is done. So let's not miss anything while we're here. After all, the view is glorious. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. You can see why that was a great closing. But kind of what a roller coaster of emotions. So many funny stories, but also deeply meaningful up and down. And it really was a spectacular evening. I really want to thank the writers most of all. Sometimes I call them readers. I don't know why. They're writers. They wrote these things. Without their inspiration and creativity and willingness to share themselves with us, we wouldn't have this event, which I know we all cherish. And it's so different hearing these stories from the authors than reading them. We could read them in a book or something, but to hear them, they're performed here tonight is just incredible. So let's have a round of applause for all of the writers. What talent we have, what talent. I have a couple other things to say. You can leave if you want to. Hey, we got done earlier than usual. I want to thank the audience too, of course. I mean, part of what makes this spectacular is your response, and the energy here is incredible. So thank you all. You know what you bring to this, I hope. And I want to say a special thank you to somebody who wouldn't even tell me how to pronounce her last name because she didn't want me to thank her. But Deborah Musiccar, hiding in the corner. She is you want to just come up for a second, Deborah? You want to come up here for a second? No? Okay. We're gonna let her be. You know who she is. You saw her. She introduced me at the beginning. She's the director of the Blue Sage. She works countless hours. She volunteers hours on top of her worked hours. And I guarantee she's had her hand in everything that goes on here. So thank her when you see her. We all love her and are grateful for everything she does. And one more thing is a pitch I wasn't asked to give, but most of you know the Blue Sage is pretty much run by volunteers. They decorate this space, they set up and break down chairs for events, they run the bar, they sit on the board and various committees, and without them, the Blue Sage wouldn't function. So if you have time, volunteer. Let Deborah know that you can help with something, and don't do something you don't like to do. Pick something you like to do. That's what makes volunteering really special. And if you don't have time, then I'm thinking that you have a job. So maybe you have money. So give money to the Blue Sage. Everybody's got one or the other, right? So do what you can, support this amazing venue, and thank you all for coming out.
Okay, I have to come up because that is awesome what you just said, and it is so true.
We're done. The lights can go up. You all can mill around for a little bit, get some fresh air again. You want to say anything?
Writers, if all the writers from tonight could come up so we can get a group picture, that would be great.